And welcome to Culture Illiterate, the second attempt at this episode, because of unforeseen issues with the youngest of us's audio being a half hour short and the first 20 minutes not having the mic on, but apparently that's not their fault. This is a podcast where four friends roast Jason. We also talk about comic book movies. I am the first year host, Jake. Growing up, I wanted to look like Nightcrawler, with the tail, the blue fur, the fingers, the pointy ears, everything. With me are my friends and co-hosts, including the one that we are going to roast.
Well, my name's Jason. I want to clarify something. I don't know what happened to my audio. My microphone was on. It was fine when I submitted it. There was some kind of technical glitch in the matrix. And that's all I can say about that. My fun fact today is that I just recently turned 21.
That's
cool.
Gross.
Anyway, my name is Matt. I'm here. And my fun fact is I really don't like Jason at the moment.
I didn't do anything.
We all agree with you, Matt.
I didn't do anything.
I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.
Oh my god.
My microphone was on.
Oh god, I'm Sean, and I think what I said the first time we did this was that I'm allergic to cats and plant sperm. I don't know why I gave out that information, but that's what I'm allergic to.
I mean, a lot of people are allergic to plant sperm.
It's a common problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nationwide problem.
I'm allergic to plant sperm, but I'm also allergic to bees.
That's because they're the sperm carriers.
No, it's because when they sting me, I get massive hives that are like a foot long and to give me agonizing pain.
It's probably because they're poisonous,
Benadryl.
so, that's probably why, as well as the fact that they're covered in pollen. So the pollen's going directly into your freaking body.
But
Do you break out when you watch the Bee Movie?
Yes.
Sad.
And it's really upsetting because I love that movie. And I just can't watch it,
I want to bring things back around to Jason's defense, because I just wanted to say that Pod don't lie, and really it was just because I wanted to make y'all cringe at that.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're fucking cringe, Jake.
But I'm still not as bad as Jason.
My immediate thought when you said that was, I wish we had a soundboard so I could hit like a cricket sound effect.
Well, I wasn't going for laughs, I was going for cringe.
Here's the thing, Jake.
Boo sound effect would be better.
Jason's not cringe. Jason is just a little gremlin that I wish I could stomp into the ground right now because of how much I hate his fucking guts right now. And you're just a fucking cringe-ass old man.
On my birthday?
It's not your birthday.
Yeah,
it's not even the month of your birthday.
Well, that's just because my birthday the last day of the month.
Well, that's Jason's fault a little bit.
This could have
been done before.
Only some years.
Well, this year, it's the last day of the month.
Well, last time we tried to do this, I gave Rex for Puss in Boots and for Megan. The Rex still stand. They're both great movies. Puss in Boots is really heartfelt, really good display of anxiety, and Megan's just a hell of a lot of fun, but I wish it was rated R so it could have more fun kills. But that's all I really want to say on the matter, because...
I have something to say.
Did this already.
I guess this is going to be my actual fun fact, is that despite Puss in Boots having success in the box office, it's actually the lowest grossing Shrek movie in the franchise. Yeah. Which honestly just speaks to the success of the franchise itself than just, saying that, it didn't make as much money, because it still did pretty well. And the fact that it's the lowest grossing movie just speaks to how successful the big green man is.
I just actually read that recently too, Matt. And I was thinking of the same thing. I was like, those movies fucking were huge.
Don't try to connect to me, you bastard.
Jesus Christ. Fighting for my life.
Anytime.
I got a hell of a segue.
Are we going to shoot down everything Jason says?
Probably. Matt will, at least. Well, I right now, Matt and Jason are kind of frenemies, and there's like a rivalry going on. And similarly to Magneto and Charles Xavier, like the movie we're talking about for the second time.
God,
X-Men,
you suck at this.
July 14, 2000, with the story co-written by Tom DeSanto, screenplay by David Hayter, and shot by Newton Thomas Siegel. It stars an ensemble cast of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Patrick Stewart as Professor X, Ian McKellen as Magneto, Famke Janssen as Jean Grey, James Marsden as Cyclops, Halle Berry as Storm, Anna Paquin as Rogue, Rebecca Romaine as Mystique. I'm blanking on his name. Is something Park. What's Park's first name?
Ray?
He plays Darth Maul, and he also played Ray Park.
There.
I was trying to think of Park, and all I could think of was Randall Park, and I was like, it's not Randall Park. And Ray Park is Toad, and more.
Randall Park.
So this is I shouldn't be laughing at this part, but it's just funny to go over this next segment for the second time. So you may notice that there's a certain name and position that we left out of that list of creatives. We came to a decision as a group that for certain individuals that are culpable, or at least culpable in our opinion, of certain actions, we don't really want to give airtime to them. We're not going to be perfect, and I'm sure there's, quite possibly will be, and already has been instances in the future that will, forget to address something or not know about a certain incident or what have you. And to be honest, it also may be a little case by case, but we just don't feel the need to give people who are guilty of various degrees of harm to others airtime. So we're going to do our best not to spotlight or promote them, but instead to point to related charities that we can encourage you to donate to, volunteer with, or anything you're able to provide us help. In this instance, we just wanted to refer to malesurvivor.org. It's a nonprofit committed to preventing, healing, and eliminating all forms of sexual victimization of boys and men through treatment, research, education, advocacy, and activism. They were on greatnonprofit.com's top-rated nonprofits of 2022, and that site, by the way, is a really good source for finding other reputable nonprofits that may be related to another cause that means a lot to you. I also wanted to shout out RAINN.org, RAINN.org. It's the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. They have an app and a National Sexual Assault Hotline that's 800-656-HOPE. As well as a chat now feature on their website. Just wanted to talk about those things a little bit, rather than a certain individual. I don't know if y'all have anything to say on the matter, but
the lesson of the day is just keep your hands to yourself. Like, seriously. Like, the American education system is shitty, but at least they tell you to keep your hands to yourself. And yet people can't follow kindergarten logic. It baffles me.
Good point.
That was such an interesting way of putting it.
There was an interesting way of putting it, but I think we all agree.
I mean, it's true. Just it's pretty simple.
I've never heard it broken down in such simple terms, but I'm for it.
It was so you could understand, Jason.
That's uncalled for. That stray was not deserved.
None of the strays have been deserved today. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that.
I do appreciate
Well,
Matt's
you're
condescension,
fucking lying, because you deserve every single fucking insult you get today for dragging our asses here.
Alright. So anyway, before we get into the plot of the movie, the X-Men are characters that they've been headliners of Marvel since, like, they basically saved them from bankruptcy in the 90s and 2000s. And have had so many different iterations across animation, video games, movies, obviously comic books. So I was wondering what each of your introductions were to the X-Men, what your relationship were with them growing up, since they were a big part of childhoods for a lot of people in our age range. And you know what? If you have a favorite X-Men or even just a favorite mutant or two, throw that in there.
I really liked X-Men Evolutions as a child, that TV show. The animated show. I loved that, still do. As well, I think there was one later on in my childhood that was like X-Men and the Wolverine, I think, that aired on like Nickelodeon or something. And that was pretty
I think it's the other way
Wolverine
around.
And the X-Men.
Yeah, something.
Yep, Wolverine and the X-Men.
Yeah, okay. I knew it was something like that. I always liked Toad. I thought he was a cool character. And then I also, when I later in life found out that the X-Men were known for being like a lot more out there and weird as characters in the comics than they're more so portrayed as in most media, that made me more interested in them, though I never really went deeper than that.
I guess I'll go next. So I actually didn't have much interaction with the X-Men as a kid. I had seen movies, specifically these, when they were coming out in the early 2000s, but I never really had much of a strong connection to them until later on when I started to get more into comics as an adult, or teenager, I guess. So it wasn't until later on that I started to go more and more into it, and kind of learn more about the X-Men themselves, and it took me an odd amount of time to actually get there, but I honestly, it became a lot better because just having a general idea of them back in the day and then seeing them now and getting to understand more about what they represent and everything has made it really cool. And favorite X-Men, I'd probably say I really like Cyclops, if just for his power. I don't know why. I always liked him. There's nothing deep to it.
Awesome.
Well, he's been done dirty.
Anyway, for me, Cyclops? Damn, that sucks to be him. Anyway, I was basically first exposed to the X-Men. I think it was like through the 90s show, because I used to watch like 4Kids when I was younger, and I'm pretty sure, actually no wait, I may be misremembering things. Never mind, let's skip that. But what my real first exposure was the Nickelodeon show Wolverine and the X-Men. I thought it was pretty cool, and I lost interest in it eventually, which turned out to be better for me because that show got canceled. And mostly through like video games, that's when I was like really exposed to like the X-Men. Things like Ultimate Alliance, Marvel vs. Capcom, and my favorite X-Men is Wolverine. Not because of the movies necessarily, because I did watch those when I was younger, but he is my main in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, so that's why he's my favorite.
So I have a somewhat similar introduction to them. Reading my dad's old comics, growing up, he had a lot of X-Men that I eventually now know is from the Chris Claremont run, the most iconic X-Men run, long running, like Claremont wrote them for decades. And that's where my desire to look like Nightcrawler and wanting to be able to teleport, because that's the best superpower ever, hands down, came from. And then the thing I was most attached to was both watching reruns of the 90s show as well as X-Men Evolution. X-Men Evolution is where I picked up my love for another one of my favorite X-Men characters, Rogue. That's still peak character design. But beyond that, I kind of, as I started getting into comics, I didn't read them for a while. It wasn't until a few years ago when Jonathan Hickman took over and launched the Krakoa era that I got more into mutants and really found some others that I like, Emma Frost and Mr. Sinister. But I think they're a really fascinating, in-depth line of books that unfortunately these movies haven't done great justice to, just how out there, as Jason mentioned, the X-Men are. But that's how I kind of got introduced to them, and then reintroduced later in life. So, and this is, as per usual, this is no one's first time seeing this movie, correct?
Yeah, I've seen it before.
I have seen it. Not in a very long time, though, but I have seen it.
I just always like to establish that. So, getting into the plot, it opens in 1944, Nazi-occupied Poland, not 94. 13-year-old Erich Linscher is separated from his parents upon entering the Auschwitz concentration camp. While attempting to reach them, he causes a set of metal gates to bend toward him because of his mutant ability to generate magnetic fields, but is knocked out by the guards. In the not-too-distant future, U.S. Senator Robert Kelly attempts to pass a Mutant Registration Act in Congress, which would force mutants to reveal their identities and abilities. Not too distant future is relative, because now it's 2023 and it'd be in the past. But anyway, President Linscher, now going by the name Magneto, and his telepathic colleague, Professor Charles Xavier. Xavier sees Linscher in attendance and is concerned with how he will respond to the Registration Act. what are your guys' thoughts on how the movie opens? And it had been, I believe the case was for all of us, it had been a while since we'd seen it. Did you remember how it started, and what were your kind of first impressions of it?
I did not remember how it started at all, actually. Like, the thing that I remember it opening with is what we'll talk about later on is with Rogue and shit. So I forgot about this, like, introduction part, and it's a good scene. I mean, it's very impactful. I mean, the Holocaust is a very clearly impactful historical event, and understandably so. So when you see that as part of someone's character origin, it's, you know, I think they shot it and made the scene in a dramatic way that kind of put some foresight into the Magneto character.
Yeah, I think
Jason, I thought you were just gonna state like a bunch of facts, like, oh, they shot it and they made it, and I thought you were gonna end it there.
No, I
don't know why it's so funny to me. Oh my god, I'm laughing.
I'm just gonna declare they made this movie.
Oh no, my cat's here. Okay, anyway, I guess I'll just move on to what I was gonna say. So, like, I did remember that the movie opened up with basically people being led to their death because the Holocaust was awful. If you were Jewish, but basically you're put into concentration camps. And it's interesting because it's at the beginning of the film, and it would seem like it would be like an origin story for like a hero, right? This is like the first opening shot, and you're obviously establishing a character, but it turns into your main antagonist. I don't necessarily want to call Magneto a villain because, well, he is a villain, but like, he's one of those villains who you very much understand, like, the reason for his thinking and his view of the world. And so, yeah, I thought that was interesting because they opened the movie with Magneto's origin story. That's not usually the case for a lot of them. They usually try to establish the protagonist, but instead we are establishing the antagonist. And obviously, like, he doesn't get like celebrated as much as Wolverine, but honestly, he should be, because Magneto is a fantastic character.
I actually like the way that Matt put that, because I never really thought about it that way, that we're seeing more from the antagonist side of things right at the beginning of the movie. But anyways, so I remember as a kid seeing this and it being a fairly impactful scene, though it was more of a vague childhood memory because I haven't seen this movie in a bit. But and I always remember at least this part because it just is such a standout compared to, I don't want to say compared to the rest of the movie, but like as an opening shot to a movie, it's fairly emotionally charged, and does a great job at bringing things together and starting the movie out as a whole.
Yeah, like if you're not a completely evil person, you're probably gonna be invested on a child getting ripped away from his family in the Holocaust. I also want to talk about the other part of the opening with the Senate hearing, because I do appreciate that the movie opens with mutants already being a known factor in the world, already being a political hot topic, and that the X-Men are already formed. I think it saves a lot of time when you're dealing with such a large cast and such a big concept. I appreciate them jumping right back into the focal point that the movies really hit on, which is a focal point in a lot of X-Men comics, the civil rights element. Before we continue on, I do have one more quick question for you guys. Do you pronounce it Xavier or Xavier?
I pronounce it Xavier.
I pronounce it Xavier.
I pronounce it Xavier too, but that's something I've never looked into.
See, I say Xavier, and because to me the whole thing is like you're talking about a comic book from the 60s. The guy's named that because of the X there. And like, I know it's one of those names that can kind of go either way, but I feel like if you're going to have him be the original leader of the X-Men, not counting Cyclops, you got to emphasize that X. I was just curious if you guys if you had a thing that you always said it as when you saw the name.
Now I'm curious. Do they? This is not something I've thought about in a long time. How do they pronounce it in the movie? Do they say Xavier?
I think they say Xavier. I think they say Xavier.
I think everything says Xavier, but now I'm just curious.
Now I'm doubting it.
I just don't give a fuck.
All right. Well, you might as well just turn your mic off.
Jesus Christ.
For 30 minutes.
You know what? Maybe I will.
In Meridian, Mississippi, a 17-year-old Marie accidentally puts her boyfriend into a coma after she kisses him because of her mutant ability to absorb the power and life force of others. Adopting the name Rogue, she runs away to Alberta, where she meets Logan, also known as Wolverine, a mutant who possesses superhuman healing abilities and metal claws that protrude from between his knuckles. They are attacked on the road by Sabretooth, a member of Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants. But two members of Xavier's X-Men, Cyclops and Storm, arrive and save them. Wolverine and Rogue are brought to Xavier's School for Mutants in Westchester County, New York, where Xavier tells Logan that Magneto appears to have taken an interest in him and asks him to stay while he investigates the matter. Rogue enrolls in the school. So Rogue is really used here as a POV character, which is something that's been largely important in a lot of X-Men adaptations. Whether you go to the comics when Claremont introduced Kitty Pryde as a lens for viewers to be introduced to that world, the X-Men in the 90s, the animated show had Jubilee. So I'm kind of happy that they use a POV character for this. I think it functions well and is very true to what they've done in the past in other mediums. That said, I think Rogue is a poor choice of POV, especially when they mischaracterize her this much, and instead of being this confident, loud, deeply caricaturized, almost southern accent badass, is just completely timid. Rogue in the comics, when she's gone through a story of learning to accept her powers that she sort of goes through here, but there was always a level of loudness and confidence, cockiness to her that's just totally absent, even to get ahead of ourselves at the end of the movie. But then also on the flip side, you have Wolverine, who, despite being far taller in this than he is typically shown, where he's usually like 5'4", being played by Hugh Jackman, who is large, is, I think, very perfectly characterized as this burly, grumpy guy who's kind of secretly a softie. But what are the rest of you, what are your thoughts on those two characters, whether it be just their introductions here, or if you want to say anything about them overall?
I mostly agree with you. I think Rogue is just kind of the character is just kind of, beyond the fact that they didn't execute her in an accurate fashion to, the original, her, like Jake said, her being confident and loud and outspoken and whatever, despite that, in addition to that, I guess, I also just think the character in general wasn't that compelling of a character. The way that, not to say that there weren't good scenes with Rogue and that the actress did a poor job or anything, but I just don't think that necessarily through this movie, she was as compelling as she should have been, I guess, or as compelling as Logan or Wolverine ended up being, which is unfortunate because Rogue is a really sick character.
I'm not a fan of the way they make her, kind of, again, getting ahead of things here, but earn the white stripe in her hair that is just such a part of her look, as well as the complete absence of her calling people sugar. She should be saying that left and right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the mischaracterization in there and everything between, I think they do Logan fantastic, but and I get the idea that they're trying to go for that these two characters are essentially the stand-ins for the audience of being integrated into the world. While I think they do Wolverine just fine, it's kind of weird that they use Rogue almost as the audience stand-in, and it just doesn't. I guess from a storytelling perspective, I guess I can say it works, but they could have characterized her better, and I think that's only my real issue with those two anyways.
Yeah, they kind of make her like Nick Carraway, like from The Great Gatsby, instead of like her being the cool, actual, defined character that she is originally.
I could definitely see why that would be a problem, especially for an X-Men movie, because the point of X-Men is, individuality is a big thing for the X-Men, and yet you take someone's individuality to make them a POV character. But hopefully that doesn't become a problem in the future series. But yeah, like, it's also weird to see, as Jake mentioned before, Wolverine being over 6 foot tall, not slouched over at all, not acting like a troll under the bridge. But like, it's still like a really good depiction of the Wolverine character. It's just, he just doesn't have that great of a posture.
Yeah, I actually really like what you said about individuality, because that is such an essential part of the X-Men and what makes the X-Men the X-Men. And when you compare her to the aforementioned Kitty Pryde and Jubilee, those characters still maintain vibrantness and that individuality, whereas they stripped it from Rogue here. And I'm not someone who needs everything to be totally comic accurate. I don't really care about that. What's the point if you're going to do it 1-to-1? But equally, what's the point of adapting something if you're going to strip everything that makes it recognizable, other than something superficial like just the power set? Why did you choose that character if you're not going to use it for what that character generally is? Or if there's just, the changes aren't interesting. I don't mind that there's changes. I mind that they're not interesting.
Yeah, and as I talked about individuality, I'm going to save this complaint for later when it's more relevant and when we get to it. But it is a bit of a problem, although it's mostly due to the time it was released, in which like this certain style was cool. I'm just insinuating to it because one, my cat is meowing in the background. I'm afraid she's being picked up on the mic. And two, it's not that relevant right now, but we'll get to it.
Senator Kelly is abducted by Brotherhood members Toad and Mystique and brought to their hideout on the uncharted island of Genosha. Magneto uses Kelly as a test subject for a machine powered by his magnetic abilities that generates a field of radiation, which induces mutations in normal humans. Kelly later escapes by taking advantage of his newfound mutation, where he turns into like slime, sort of. Rogue visits Wolverine during the night while he's having a nightmare. Startled, he accidentally stabs her, but she is able to absorb his healing ability to recover. This is observed by fellow students who arrive to help. She's later convinced by Mystique, disguised as Rogue's crush Bobby Drake. Side note, it's strange to see a straight Iceman. He was not canonized as gay at the time in the comics, but at this point he has been for like over a decade, including when I really started reading them, so just kind of funny for me to watch. Anyway, she disguises herself as Bobby Drake and convinces her Rogue that Xavier is angrier with her and that she should leave the school. Xavier uses his mutant locating machine to find Rogue at a train station, and the X-Men go to retrieve her. Meanwhile, Mystique enters Cerebro and sabotages it. So, first thing I want to talk about from that chunk is, at this point where we've brought up a lot of the side characters, whether it be the X-Men, whether it be the Brotherhood. But so how do you guys feel about the characters in the Brotherhood, obviously outside of Magneto, well, including Magneto, but also talking about Toad, Mystique, Sabretooth?
I love Toad. I don't really like Sabretooth that much, and Mystique is like fine. And that's all I got.
Well, that's just the thing, is that other than Magneto, no other villain really has any depth at all. Like, Toad has like some hint of personality, which makes him more likable than everyone else. But like, as Jason cleverly put, I don't like Sabretooth. It's just because he is just a big guy who's furry, has claws, has teeth. Except for not that kind of furry. That I just realized what I was saying. But like, it's like he's like actually like a cat, and then like, that's really it. Like, he's, oh my gosh, he's a Sabretooth, but in a man form. Okay, you know what? I'm going even more to furry territory. So let's just skip Sabretooth. Mystique, she does like progress the plot, so she does have some importance, but like, she doesn't really have like a personality of her own. The only like thing you get from her is that she sticks really closely to Eric, so you think that they're in a relationship, but that's really it. Like, there's no one really else that I can really think of.
Yeah, it's interesting how the movies always kind of stick Mystique with Magneto, because, again, this actually isn't a change that I mind, it's just a funny one to me. Mystique, hates him, comic book wise. So it's just an interesting change to me. I wonder what the thought process was there. I'm guessing it was just simplicity's sake.
Yeah, I can assume that it's also maybe an idea of, because of her powers and the way that they utilize them in the film, that it kind of can help with a lot of plot things, I assume. Also, I mean, I kind of am fine with it, I guess. I love Magneto. I think the rest of them are fine, too. They obviously don't stand out anywhere near as much as Magneto for obvious reasons that are obvious. But, I still think they do their job, I guess, as lackeys, really, in the end. Although, the one thing that is weird is looking back at this is Sabretooth looks really weird. I think it's just a period of it being dated and the design that they used for the film and the costuming and everything with him, but, I don't know why. He just doesn't look right to me.
Well, I'm going to say right now, other than the aforementioned Toad, I think most of the costume design is very, very outdated.
Oh, yes.
That's why I said that I don't like Sabretooth. I just think, he looks outdated. He's not, intimidating as a brute force. He's just, he looks weird, he sounds weird, and he is weird, and I don't like him.
I don't like anything about him. Well, that's just the thing. It's just he has no personality, and the only thing he serves to be in the Brotherhood is just the muscle. And yet he's not even the strongest mutant, and so that's also a moot point.
Looking at pictures of it now at the moment, is it's kind of funny looking at him, his the way he looks versus the comics, because he has this is not a dig at the actor at all. He just has a really big forehead, and it's more prominent because he has a massive widow's peak on top of having really long hair. So he looks kind of like a greasy dude. I don't know how else to put it. He also has really massive eyebrows for costume wise. They gave him I get the idea that they're going for is that he's supposed to have a lot of hair, but then it's it goes down the sides of his face and connects to his beard to some degree, and it's very strange.
Yeah, it's really dumb.
It feels like they may have just overdone it on Sabretooth's design a little bit. It's not awful to me, but it's just a little overdone.
I think it is damn near awful.
Well, I'm kind of with all y'all in general in terms of I feel like most of the Brotherhood, Magneto is incredible. He's charismatic. He's sympathetic. Ian McKellen kills it. I in a weird way, I like that the Brotherhood are not too stand out, because it makes it very believable to me that Magneto's leading these people and there's a reason that these guys are following him. I do actually really like Rebecca Romijn as Mystique, despite her, in my opinion, having the worst design in the whole movie, with the decision to just let's have Mystique be naked and scaly.
Yeah, let's make her a lizard woman.
And Toad has some fun moments with his, y'all gonna laugh, but with his tongue. But as a whole, I mean, I agree with you. I think all the designs are best case bland, worst case downright awful. But building off of that and building off of discussing Magneto's leadership displayed in the movie and his more strong will, I think that's displayed through Ian McKellen's performance. How do you guys feel about Magneto's plan? Because as much as I don't mind silliness in my comic book shit, it was a bridge too far for me, the way and I don't know scientifically if magnetism could do this, I don't know, but that his magnet powers led to altering DNA through radiation. There seemed to be basically practically no explanation as to how that works, and it just felt why couldn't you have had it be done? I like his plot. I think it's a good plot for the movie, but why not just have it be that he gives a formula? I don't know. It just feels like you could have written it better, or even just thrown in more of an explanation as to how we got from point A of magnets to point B of genetic mutation.
To me,
that's just the problem. Well, you go first, Jason.
Okay. To me,
fuck you. I'm going first.
Okay.
Anyway, that's like the real problem, is that there's no real explanation of how the machine works, and it makes no sense since it's being powered by Magneto, and yet his power has nothing to do with altering human DNA, so it makes no sense. Besides that point, like almost everything else could be, it can be used, and the plot point, I just feel like, because like the whole point is that he's willing to sacrifice as many people as possible, even other mutants, for what he thinks is for the greater good. And so I easily could have just make like a new character, not use like Rogue and use her as a plot device. Just make like a new character, or maybe like a pre-established X-Men character who like can alter DNA or like something of the sort, right? And then like use them as like the plot device to basically say, this person has the capability to change everyone into a mutant, so I'm going to sacrifice them. And the point would be, still there. Or, right, maybe like, I don't know, if they like reimagine Scarlet Witch to have like these kind of powers, and Scarlet Witch is Magneto's daughter, so that he doesn't want to sacrifice her, but that's when you bring Rogue in, right? Take Scarlet's powers and then put her in the machine. So that's the same point. But anyway, it's like what Jake said, like you could have written it so that it'll make more sense, but this is what we get, and it's just something you just can't think about, because the more you think about it, the less it makes sense, and you're just going to be thinking about why the hell is magnetic powers change human DNA. You just can't think about that. You just had to pretend to be dumb. That's it.
Yeah, to me it just seems very much like they had like a general plot for Magneto, but not like a way for it to function. So they didn't care enough to make one.
They had a point A and a point C, but they didn't think of how to get anywhere in the middle, so they kind of just made up point B and went along with it.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, fine, at least you found a way, but like, if I ever think about this, it doesn't make me it doesn't make me think good thoughts.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying what I was trying to say.
Next topic, Cerebro. What do you all think about it? Was it cool? How did you feel? I think I liked it because whenever I saw it and Xavier rolling down to the middle of it and putting on the helmet, I always like, and it's in this like big sphere, I always like the idea of jumping off and sliding around in it, because it just seems like a massive fun sphere.
Oppositely, I want to take a nap in there. It looks cozy. I like how it's big, smooth, and shiny, like Patrick Stewart's head. He has the best head for that role. And I just always thought it looked really, really cool and kind of satisfying. And I like how the bottom's never in frame. So it's like, how fucking deep is this thing? Big fan of the Cerebro design. Costume design in this movie sucks ass. But the mansion and like the underground shit in Cerebro looks cool.
Yeah, I also agree. I agree, Jake, that I love the bottom never being in frame, because it makes it feel even huger, if that's a word.
Huger.
As you're watching the movie. And also, like, it's just so sick, and I wish I could go in it in real life. It looks so sick. That's all I have to say.
Do you know what I want to do? I just want to get a skateboard, put it on the side, and then just, instead of like shredding it like a normal skateboard, I'm going to sit on it and just be taken along of the ride of my fucking life, just going back and forth in this humongous sphere. Oh my god, that sounds so much fun. I wish it was real.
I'm imagining like like the Hot Wheels tracks that they had where you could have like cars go through big loops.
Yeah,
I'm just imagining there's like two little speed bumpers at the bottom of it that just make you fucking go around the whole thing.
Is this a fucking Mario Kart track? What the hell is this?
I'm wondering what happens if Xavier falls over and falls off the platform.
He's gonna have the time of his fucking life. That's what he's gonna have.
But without his wheelchair.
That was funny.
I think it's a never-ending pit, and he's just gonna fall forever. We never see the bottom. We don't know.
Another thing worth mentioning from this segment, actually, is when Senator Kelly escapes, it's actually the first Stan Lee cameo we we get to mention. He is a hot dog vendor on the beach when Kelly washes up and walks away.
That's right.
We're getting into that beautiful
Yeah,
era.
so that's the start of that.
Also, it's kind of weird that like the senator like devolves into this slime thing, and yet when he emerges from the water, he has fins. Isn't like okay? So I might be skipping a little bit. But like, wasn't like the point of that to just say like Magneto's plan has flaws because people cannot like basically the machine isn't working as intended. Or no, it is working as intended because it's turning. You know what? We'll get to it later because this is just like a whole nugget of information that I really need to process right now, and I do not have the brain capacity to think about it. Because it'll give me a moment.
Well, the scene serves a lot of purposes. It shows what Magneto's plan is. It shows that the plan, a lot of people will die in the plan. They're not just going to all smoothly turn into mutants and live happily ever after, and that he is okay with this. It's the fact that he chooses Senator Kelly, the most vocal anti-mutant politician, to make it a very political statement. With Kelly getting away, it seems pretty intentional almost that he lets Kelly leave because that's more of a statement. But anyway, I also wanted to just say, because this one last thing on that paragraph, because it covers my favorite scene in the movie, I'd say, is the Wolverine stabbing Rogue scene. I think it's a great scene for both of those characters. It's super well acted by both Anna Paquin and Hugh Jackman, and I think it sets this there's like genuine shock there that you don't see it coming, that your one lead's gonna stab the other lead seemingly fatally pretty early, like not even halfway to the movie. And I think it sets a tone of like anything could happen, as well as just being like in isolation, a pretty well shot and acted scene.
I agree.
I agree.
That's how
I don't.
That's how you can tell this is a second recording, because we talked about that scene like a bunch last time, and now y'all are just like, I agree, and I don't blame you. I just think it's funny if we keep bringing up the fact that Jason fucked up.
I didn't
did he
fuck
now?
up.
Let's talk about that more.
Let's talk about
no.
that more.
How about
Jason didn't fuck up.
instead? Let's talk about that. Having left ahead of Storm and Cyclops, Wolverine finds Rogue on a train and convinces her to return to the school. Before they can leave, Magneto arrives, knocks out Wolverine, subdues Rogue, revealing it was her he really wanted rather than Wolverine. Although Xavier attempts to stop him by mentally controlling Sabretooth, he is forced to release his hold when Magneto threatens the police, who have converged on the train station, allowing the Brotherhood to escape with Rogue. Kelly arrives at the school, and Xavier reads his mind to learn about Magneto's machine. Realizing the strain of powering it nearly killed him, the X-Men deduce he intends to transfer his powers to Rogue and use her to power it at the cost of her life. Kelly's body rejects his mutation, and his body dissolves into liquid. Xavier attempts to locate Rogue using Cerebro, but Mystique sabotage incapacitates him, and he falls into a coma. Fellow telekinetic and telepath Jean Grey fixes Cerebro and uses it, learning that the Brotherhood plans to place their mutation-inducing machine on Liberty Island and use it to mutate the world. Fellow telekinetic and telepath Jean Grey fixes Cerebro and uses it, learning that the Brotherhood plans to replace the mutation-inducing machine on Liberty Island and use it to mutate the world leaders meeting at a summit on nearby Ellis Island. The X-Men scale the Statue of Liberty, battling and overpowering the Brotherhood, while Magneto transfers his powers to Rogue and activates the mutation machine. As Wolverine confronts and distracts Magneto, Cyclops blasts him away, allowing Wolverine to destroy the machine. He transfers his powers to Rogue, rejuvenating her while incapacitating himself. We're getting just about to the end of the plot here, and we have one thing we haven't talked about much is the expansive cast of the X-Men themselves. We spent some time on the Brotherhood, but you're talking about, in addition to Professor X, and Wolverine and Rogue, you get the appearances from Bobby Drake here and there, Iceman, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Storm. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot going on. Do you guys have any highlights or lowlights in terms of characters and casting?
I love the interactions between Wolverine and Cyclops. That is all.
I like James Marsden.
I do too. I couldn't help but think of Sonic every time I saw him.
Yeah, it's weird to see him in the movie without being followed by a CGI animal.
Yeah, I think casting in this... go for it, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to say that there were like a few highlights. That is like a lot of movie that was like neatly condensed in like a couple paragraphs, because that went through a lot. Like it didn't what?
Just go.
Okay. Anyway, okay, so I forgot the first thing I was going to say because I was so rudely interrupted by Jake. But the second thing is what I really liked was the conversation between Storm and the Senator Kelly.
Agreed.
Because basically Kelly knows that he doesn't have much time left, and so he has an open conversation with basically a race that he's trying to take away their rights, and they have like a very open conversation, and Storm basically tells him that I don't really like you, but he's basically helping you is like the right thing to do. And the ending like statements of the conversation is like really sad, because I don't remember exactly like what Storm said, but she says something about like being afraid of him, and then the senator basically says that you don't have to be afraid of me anymore, because then he just turns into a water balloon and just he's gone. But despite dying so comedically, it was actually kind of sad, because they're finally having open dialogue, and he seems to like finally see some humanity in the mutants, but instead he turned to a water balloon.
Yeah, I think the casting in this movie is kind of really all over, hit or miss. I think you have stuff that becomes...
Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say, like the casting. My favorite casting is Halle Berry, because you don't know she's supposed to do an African accent for like half the movie.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say is... when we were recording last time, you mentioned the fact that she does a terrible accent, and like me and Sean were like, she's trying to do an accent, it's so bad. And Holly,
yeah, I had no idea when I originally watched this, and on a second when we viewed it together this time, that I was like, I had no idea she was actually trying to do an accent until Matt pointed it out.
I still don't hear it.
Because it's mostly not there. Is because like most of the time she's just speaking in a normal American accent, and yet in certain words she decides to have the accent, and so it's so confusing, and so you don't know she has an accent unless you like open your ears up with like a pair of pliers, because you have to listen so carefully.
Yeah, I think the quality of casting is really all over the place. I think you have some instantly classic casting with Patrick Stewart as Professor X, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. It's really wasted, but James Marsden is a perfect Cyclops. And then Ian McKellen is legendary as Magneto. I do still wish they had cast a Jewish person as Magneto. In general, there is a long history in comic book adaptations of Jewish and Romani characters, of which there are a lot, and most of which were created by incredibly influential Jewish and Romani creators to tell their stories, not being adapted by Jewish and Romani actors. So I hope they do that going forward, but no shade at Ian McKellen. He still, freaking crushes it every time he plays this role. You can't deny that regardless. But then you also have, like, Anna Paquin, I think is just such as talented as she is not a fit for Rogue. Rebecca remains a great Mystique, but then also I don't really know that Sabretooth and Toad are notable in those roles. So it's really kind of all over for me. There's some really bad casting, there's some really great casting. There's a couple asterisks in there. Famke Janssen as Jean Grey is just like fine to me. But as a whole, that character is wasted, because I think she's kind of just there to be the object of desire for Wolverine, so that Cyclops could be mad at Wolverine, which even in the comics where it's big, I never liked that love triangle, but at least there's a lot more character to Scott and Jean, whereas this pretty much only focuses on Logan. So for me, it's a mixed bag, but there's enough all-time great castings in there that it kind of leans to the positive side, even if it's a little bit crowded.
Look, right, you can if a series comes out, right, and there are like multiple strikeouts but also home runs, you're going to forget about the strikeouts because you're just going to be thinking about the home runs all day.
So then, talking about the climax set at both the museum on Liberty Island and then on the Statue of Liberty itself, I think is a great example of really good character moments as well as great creative uses, collaborative uses really of the various X-Men's powers. In particular, Wolverine has a lot of great moments with the flipping people off with the middle claw when he sniffs out Mystique when she's disguised. That fight in general is really great. I think it's a good Mystique scene as well. And then subsequently, the Cyclops questioning, how do we know it's the real you? Wolverine saying, you're a dick, and that being enough. I think in general, these fights are really, really good, though I do want to note that they do contain, in my opinion, a really, really dumb-looking Wolverine 360ing on the Statue of Liberty's crown tip using his claws. I just think it looks too dumb and cartoony for a movie that otherwise strips those elements of the comics. As well as, I think, the worst one-liner I've ever heard in my life, from when Storm asked Toad what happens when a frog is struck by lightning, same thing as anything else. It's bad. It's really, really unintentionally, I think, cringy. But other than that, I think it's a really fun set piece on the Statue of Liberty with some really great use of powers, and there's a lot of teamwork shown that makes it clear why the X-Men as a team matter and not just as individuals, because those are both important elements of the characters.
I think that scene is good because it does a good job of balancing each character, and it's like there's a lot of characters in that fight scene, but they each have their purpose, and it balances it well and has them actually working together as a team. Which I like.
All right, so wrapping the plot up.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Go for it.
I had to sing something.
Okay.
Wait.
Are you gonna say something?
Matt doesn't remember what it is.
Yes, I am now. So basically, I'm going to now answer like what I was calling back, like, I don't know, 20 minutes ago. I don't know. I have no sense of time when I do these things. But back when I was talking about individuality and how it wasn't just like the characterization of Rogue that was the problem. It's also the costumes. Like, they are so simple. Mostly because they're all the same color. It's leather black. And whatever detail they added to the costume is just not really seen that well. Because, black doesn't really reflect very well in light, and so even when you light it well, the details don't pop up. And the fact that they made them so uniform also takes away from the individuality of each of the mutants, because they're supposed to be it's not, their powers are not the only things that distinct them, is also their look, but they all look the same. And so that's what another like pet peeve I have. Another pet peeve is like Storm's stupid ass quote when she was defeating Toad. So basically Toad like kicked her into like an elevator shaft, and then when she emerged and like was about to strike him with lightning, she says, "Do you know what happens when a toad gets struck by lightning?" And one, that doesn't make any sense. And two, like, did she even give an answer?
She did
to that question.
She did give an answer, because I already talked about this directly before you started talking. She says same thing as everything else. Okay. It's her big cool line. It's same thing as everything else.
Well, it's dumb.
It is.
And cringe. Like
I
Halle
agree.
Berry's Storm in general.
So,
which is why I love it.
All right. So wrapping up the plot, Professor Xavier and Wolverine recover from their comas. Because did anyone ever think for a second that Wolverine was actually going to die? The group also learns that Mystique escaped the island battle and is impersonating Senator Kelly despite being seriously injured by Wolverine. Xavier gives Wolverine a lead to his past at an abandoned military installation in Canada. Magneto is imprisoned in a complex constructed of plastic and is visited by Xavier, and Magneto warns him that he intends to escape one day and continue the fight. Xavier replies that he will always be there. I think the movie wraps up on a pretty strong note. The prison scene in particular with the plastic prison, not only does it look really astonishing, but I think it really perfectly sums up the relationship between Charles and Eric of respect and a weirdly shared hope, even if at this point their methods are just so wildly different. But before we get into like overall thoughts and final thoughts, do you guys have anything to say on that last little bit of wrap up there?
Yeah, I wanted to. You already kind of said it, but I do want to point out that like that's probably my favorite thing in all of the X-Men movies is just the well-established brotherhood and respect that Magneto and Xavier have for each other. Because I think that is such an underutilized dynamic between characters where they're, despite being, directly opposing each other, having such love and respect for each other, and being such close friends, and really wanting the same things, but having different ideas of what those things are and how to get there.
Oh yeah, that is a really interesting dynamic, and is what makes X-Men so unique compared to like other superhero IPs, is that Xavier and Magneto has like such a respect for each other. And Magneto is like, he perfectly understands like Xavier. He like understands like what Xavier is doing, but it's just not what he believes. And you believe the way he thinks, right? Because you saw him, see his mother being taken away to her death. And they expand upon it later, and like, no, not X-Men Origins, X-Men First Class, as to like what they did to him after they realize he's a mutant. But like, yeah, it basically establishes like why he has such a hatred for humans, and that his war is not with Xavier, is with human beings, and that Xavier just he wants to fight Magneto, not just because he thinks Magneto is wrong, but like he also wants to let Magneto like see his way of thinking, and so that when they're playing like chess and they're discussing, they're basically discussing like there's the solutions to the problem of like mutant discrimination. It's the best part of the movie. Or am I just rambling? I don't know. I'm kind of running out of gas here because of Jason.
Just gotta throw him under the bus one last time.
Well, it is his fault. The reason I'm here right now is because
I didn't do anything, Matt.
Yes, you did.
I don't think I can add to anything that's already been said, but I agree with both of you, and that's as far as I will take it.
Cool.
All right. So overall, for myself, I think it's a pretty good movie. I think it's nothing remarkable visually necessarily, but there's just the average like before like Avengers 2012 blockbuster and specifically comic book movies looked better just by default almost than they do nowadays. I think I'm talking in terms of like just color grading, cinematography, stuff like that. I think overall, despite some of the issues with the castings, in particular Anna Paquin and Halle Berry just being horribly miscast for their respective characters, there's a lot to really like. I think it makes a smart decision keeping things relatively simple. Overall, my favorite thing has got to be Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. That's just an iconic performance in pretty much all of his appearances, but it starts here, and he's great from the get-go. And just really, I think it's hard not to be invested in that character and to therefore be invested in the movie as he's the focal point. Though that's a bit of a, not to get ahead of ourselves, a bit of a gift and a curse later down the line for the franchise. My least favorite thing, surprisingly, I'm not going to say Rogue again. It's actually the costume design and the character designs in general. I think they're awful. Mystique's is the worst, but there's actually a line in the movie where they put on the black leather suits for the first time, and Cyclops looks at Wolverine, who's like not very happy about them, and says, "What would you prefer, yellow spandex?" And every single time I'm like, yes, I would. Because like Matt said earlier, one of the ways you visualize the important individuality of the team is they all have such and again, I'm speaking broadly, there's been plenty of runs and plenty of good runs where they've had matching costumes. But largely speaking, when you picture the X-Men, I'm willing to bet most people picture them like their 90s outfits, which is when they were popularized, which are bright colors and all very different than each other. And they were brought together by the X logo on their belts, on their uniforms somewhere. But to go from that as the look to just like plain black leather, the suits look bad. The material does not look good. And it's just a really boring design choice. So that's my least favorite element. But I definitely recommend the movie as a whole. I think it's a solid, accessible way to get introduced to the X-Men without being, and get a taste for it without being overwhelmed by how much there really is expansively.
My favorite part of the whole movie is probably just Magneto and Xavier's dynamic, like we already talked about. But I think both those actors give great performances. I do agree with what Jake said about I wish Magneto had been cast as an actually Jewish actor to play the character, but Ian McKellen still did a great job, and Patrick Stewart is fantastic. Their whole dynamic as, enemies but also close friends is very well established in the movie, and they do it very well. My least favorite part is I think it's just some of the characters are just so underused or developed, mostly like Rogue, but also like I think Jake mentioned Cyclops as well. He's just kind of in there to argue with Wolverine and have, witty comebacks at each other, which is cool, but it's the only thing he's there for, which is dumb. But overall, I would recommend it. It's worth it to see the beginning of Hugh Jackman's run as Wolverine. It's overall a good movie.
Yeah, I guess I'm next. So ultimately, I recommend it. What a shocker. But my least favorite thing, as Jake mentioned, and technically I mentioned way back, the costume design in general and some of the character designs are just awful. Like, yellow spandex would look so good on these characters. Like, they're basically made to be in yellow spandex, and it's amazing. And yet, even to like this day, like, we haven't seen like a main screen adaptation of yellow spandex Wolverine, and that's a shame. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just superhero movies just need to be more colorful, and I do feel like we're moving on from that, but unfortunately, like, I still feel like we have some ways to go. But there's a lot of good things about the movie, like my favorite part being like the casting, of course. Like Wolverine played by Hugh Jackman is iconic. Patrick Stewart playing Professor X is iconic. Magneto and being played by Ian McKellen is also very, very iconic. So yeah, that's what I like about the movie. And yeah, thumbs up. Go watch it. Just don't look up the guy who directed it, because he is a piece of garbage shit. Whatever bad word you can think of, that's what he is.
So yeah, things I liked about it. I like the character. My favorite part, I guess, is more the characterization of both Xavier and Magneto. I think that's a hefty standout, along with the casting as well. Like you guys said before. My least favorite part, I can't remember what I said before, but I will definitely go with my least favorite being on top of saying that it was my favorite thing. Also, the worst thing was probably the casting in certain situations, and I think that really hurts it for me in certain ways. Especially, again, on the flip side, the characterization too for certain characters is also just not as well done as it could be. And I think it's a double-edged sword in this movie, which is sad to say, but either way, I still think it's a fantastic movie and is a good foray into the beginning of what superhero movies were to essentially follow afterwards. So it's just kind of, I give it a thumbs up.
All right, well, 4 for 4 from us on X-Men. Thank you to ALO VFX, ALO VFX on Twitter for our artwork for the podcast. If you want to keep listening to us, well, you can follow my Letterboxd, JakeWalter98 on Letterboxd. Jason, plug away.
I make music. I made the intro, outro music for the podcast. I'm working on some songs that I'm going to put out at some point, whenever I finish them. I don't know when, whatever. You can listen to them when they come out on my SoundCloud, The Upsides. You can follow my Instagram, The Upsides PA, and my Twitter, _UpsidesPA.
If you're interested in continuing to check out the podcast, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at illiterate_pod. You can reach us for questions, comments, concerns at culturalitteratepod@gmail.com. All episodes are on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. On YouTube, it's Culture Illiterate Podcast. The next episode, we're going to cover the 2002 Marvel film from an acclaimed horror director, Guillermo del Toro's Blade 2. Remember that Magneto was right, Jason messed up, and let's get out of here.